I am a music lover. I am obsessed with music. And by that I mean I would consider having music in my life one of my basic fundamental needs. Music, to me, serves as a conduit to other realms from the universe into my human self. Through music, I can access emotions within myself that I otherwise don't know how to reach or don't understand and just can't quite place. But this isn't about music. This video here is about boys. More specifically, boys who I've had crushes on, slash had some interest in some kind of way. I've mentioned before that high school Jenny was an idiot, and I mean that in the kindest way. I crushed with all of my heart. When I got into something, I really got into it, and if it was a person, then I wanted to know so much about them. Fortunately for me, my crushes all had one thing in common: an amazing taste in music. But not the same kind of music, and that's what I'm getting down to today. So I was looking at my old live journal, and that's something for another video another day. But one thing that popped out at me was how the music that I was currently listening to would change depending on what crush I was talking about at the time. Now, I wasn't going around loving on everybody here. I had some major crushes that lasted years, and some that were very important for maybe a couple of months. That's how I crushed on people. And still do, I guess. Each of these young men, however, has had an impact on my life in a way that I don't think they were quite expecting, and certainly not in a way I was expecting. By crushing on these young men and finding out what they were interested in, I was exposed to so many different kinds of music that have made their way through my lifetime, through the past decade and a bit, and I still appreciate and even listen to. Hell, most of them are still on my iPod. So here they are, my crushes and the music they brought to me. My first ever big crush was Nomis. This crush took over a good 3 years of my life. And I should remind you that I wasn't the kind of girl who could actually go and talk to her crushes. She could talk to her crush's friends, but not the man in question. And this was around 2004, 2005, and at the time, Nomis loved pop punk, Blink-182, Green Day, and of course we're in Canada, so Sum 41 and maybe a bit of Simple Plan in there. I didn't naturally come to pop punk despite having really enjoyed Green Day way back in the 90s when I was really little, but I wanted to pay attention to what Nomis listened to. So I checked out Simple Plan, I checked out Sum 41, I checked out Blink-182, and I wanted to put myself in his shoes and find out what did he enjoy about this music. What did it do for him? And though I didn't actually speak to him about it, I learned to appreciate this music for my own reasons. And that's basically what happened across the board with all the crushes to come. I didn't ever find that I hated the music, I always found something to appreciate about it. So starting right off the bat, Nomis, Simon, thank you for bringing Green Day and Blink-182 into my life. Next are a couple of minor crushes, and this isn't to say that those gentlemen aren't important and weren't very impressive to me, but it didn't last very long. I moved on somewhere else, or something big happened, I don't know. So next we have Dan. Dan was a very tall Romanian guy with shaggy hair who danced like no tomorrow. This was about grade 10 or 11, at which point I was already having my own musical journey into the world of Led Zeppelin and sort of hair metal bands just by my own whim. And Dan helped bring this out of me. He exposed me to so much more Led Zeppelin and bands like T-Rex and glam metal and glam rock, as well as bands like Skid Row and Guns N' Roses, all of which I came to appreciate in my own way, but I got to talk about it and get excited about it with the help of Dan. Next we have someone whose name I actually can't remember. I just have it written down here as Olive. I guess his nickname was Olive. So Olive, whoever you are, maybe you remember this, you brought out the blues. And not just sexy soul blues, I mean like Buddy Guy and Sonny Boy Williamson, Muddy Waters, and some grainy folksy rock, and the Steve Miller Band, and ZZ Top. No one else I knew at the time listened to this kind of stuff. And I'm so glad that, oh, I just remembered his name. Hey Rob. I was just so willing to learn more and appreciate more and just take it all in. Around the same time, early high school, my friend Mike, or Sparky as I called him, showed me the genius of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. That played in perfectly with my classic rock, blues, funk, soul mixture going on. And I owe you a huge debt of gratitude, Mike, for introducing me to them. What next? Here's a biggie. Now we come to Ben. Ben was a landmark crush in my lifetime. He was the first crush I actually properly spoke to, got over my fear of speaking to crushes, and I'd venture to say we actually became friends. Ben's musical tastes fit in perfectly with what I was checking out at that time. More Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and some more modern stuff like the White Stripes and the Killers. In fact, I remember one French class, he leaned over my desk, took my cahier, and wrote on the page the name of a Killer song, Jenny Was a Friend of Mine, with musical notes beside it. Ben was also an acoustic lover, and it was through him that I learned about Dallas Green, City and Colour, Bon Iver, and some more low-key acoustic indie performers. Ben had a big influence on my life in many ways, but music was an especially long-lasting one. 16 is that prime age where you start sort of wandering out and finding new things, finding really unusual things that aren't quite like you, and you're really reaching the outer corners of your personality and exploring what you like. When I was 16, I had a huge crush on Shane, or as I referred to him, Swoon. Of course, we had to have code names in these days, because if they actually heard you talking about them, then they'd know you liked them, even though it was totally obvious that you liked them, because you'd behave like an idiot around them all the time, and you'd turn red and blush and freak out and giggle and just, ugh. It was so obvious. If I had a crush on you in high school, you knew it. And I'm so sorry. Swoon was so cool. He had that, like, deathlock hair, I think that's what it's called. Like, emo, screamo, scene-ish kind of kid thing. Just so cool. And of course, he was the whole package. He listened to screamo music, awesome metal shit, Hollywood Undead, rap, rock, metal, something, melodic, screamo, metal, in flames stuff, really gory, creepy, weird stuff, and that had me hooked. Now, I still listen to In Flames, and their entire album, Come Clarity, is still on my iPod, and I will listen to it, and that is solely because of Shane. Nobody I knew listened to that kind of music. Absolutely no one. I'd already secretly been listening to My Chemical Romance since I was 14, but I couldn't tell anybody this because the people who were vocal about their love for MCR wore it with pride. They looked the part, they acted the part, everything. Me, not so much. So I kept it to myself and listened to them on my own time. So Swoon looked the part. And he also kind of bridged the gap between the, like, screamo, emo, scene kid indie stuff. And that kind of blurred its way into the Arctic Monkeys. 2005, 2006. So this is, like, early Arctic Monkeys with the, like, heavy accent, all that kind of thing. Yeah, early days, man. I didn't pick up many new crushes in grade 12. Over this whole time, I should mention, there was one fella who was always around because he worked at the school. Mr. Gray was a music teacher. Not my music teacher. I didn't take music, but he was around, and it was through him that I discovered my all-time favorite band, The Tea Party. Okay, you probably don't know The Tea Party. They're a Canadian rock band from the 90s who split up for a while in 2003 to somewhere, but they're back now, and they are amazing. Think of Led Zeppelin, The Doors, mixed with, like, Eastern traditional folk music, like, bring that all in together. All through the 90s, there were so many different styles going through the 90s, and the Tea Party picked up on every one of them. Fantastic. They were once termed as Moroccan roll. Their music just fills your senses and dives into your heart and into your psyche and just explodes out of it. They're my favorite, can you tell? The Tea Party dominated the soundtrack of my high school experience, and that's all thanks to Mr. Gray. Their music is often quite dark, beautifully poetic, occasionally quite cerebral. If you read into the lyrics, they can get so deep, and you can really fall down the rabbit hole of just incredible content. Thank you, Mr. Gray. I don't think you realize how much of an impact your suggestion has had on my life. After high school, there were Steve and Adrian. Steve is a jazz musician, and when I think of him, I think of Nancy Wilson, the Beach Boys, the musical Into the Woods, and weird conceptual improv jazz. Adrian was my first actual boyfriend, and that was an experience in itself, but from him I gained a real love and appreciation for Paul Simon, specifically the Graceland album. I remember listening to that many times, dancing around his mom's living room, and just having a blast. Then there was Andy, with whom I bonded over music instantly. And we're talking about soul music, and rhythm and blues, and doo-wop, and Motown. Jackie Wilson, Otis Redding, real groovy, funky, back in the 60s. I used to watch those infomercials where they'd be selling this huge collection of, like, soul sounds of the 70s. And they'd play, like, a 10-second clip of this song being played on, like, midnight special or something, and then there'd constantly be the screens full of song title and artist just streaming up faster than you can read across the screen. And I would be ready with my pen and paper to jot down as fast as I could what the song title was and who it was by. And in Andy, I found someone who loved the music just as much as I did, and who was willing to actually sway around in the basement to it. Wicked. There were a couple other crushes here and there, like Corey, who introduced me to more mellow stuff, indie pop, folky stuff, like Pinback and Hey Rosetta, that kind of thing. And for him, I also started associating songs to him. I think I actually made a playlist, like, inspired by him and the music that he had shown me, and songs that made me think of him. And it's a decent playlist. Not that it makes me think of him anymore, but it's got some really great songs on it, and I do still listen to it. And now we come to Calum. Now, my initial crush on him developed because of music. He'd be playing music in the kitchen where we worked, and I'd be walking through listening to him play The Beatles and Van Halen and Journey and that kind of stuff. He actually won my heart on one of our early dates, lip-syncing to Meatloaf on the bus on the way to North Vancouver. Yeah. Calum shares my love of classic rock, like Led Zeppelin, Journey, Motley Crue, AC/DC, which I'm still kind of iffy on, but that's a whole other story. And while we share these things, he's also exposed me to EDM. Somehow I'd managed to avoid EDM for a very long time, and I just knew, like, old electronica from the 90s and the early 2000s, but I had no idea of anything beyond, like, Skrillex. But sure enough, Calum was able to find some EDM DJs that I actually really enjoy. And yes, they're on my iPod. And yes, I still listen to them. And yes, I bounce around my room to it. Probably not enough for me to go to a music festival and have a great time at some rave party there, but enough that I can understand what's going on in the music and what the appeal is. And I don't think I'd have been able to find that on my own without someone to guide me into it. Now, I'm not saying I never would have found any of this music or come to enjoy it had it not been for these young men, but it was by having crushes on these different types of men that helped me explore different parts of my personality, indicated, of course, through music. My love of music is immense, and I consider my connection to it a huge part of my personal identity. Who would have known there's a little screamo scene kid inside me, or a tormented old black man blues singer? So I guess what I want to say is, don't be ashamed of your obsessions. Ooh, she said the word obsession. Go forth toward your interests, whether they be a person, a musical style, an art style, a sport, another activity, whatever. Be passionate in your investigation. And if you're a crazy amorous person like I was in high school, one-up me. Talk to those crushes. It would have been so much better if I'd actually been able to really share this love of music with each of these people. I kept a lot of it to myself. And though that allowed me to have a personal connection to the music, it meant I missed out on some really, really cool personalities. Or who knows, maybe they would turn out to be dickheads. I don't know. But don't be ashamed of wanting to find out more. Music is such a powerful tool to explore the psyche, the human condition, the extreme edges of one's personality. There's absolutely no reason to pigeonhole yourself into one style and one genre. There's a whole world of music out there. And if it takes an infatuation for some guy in high school to show you some of that, then fine, cool, be better than I was, talk to them, and chat about some awesome music. You might find yourself looking back a decade later and finding a whole new appreciation for those people. So to all the young men who have been at the mercy of Jenny's crushes, I am truly sorry, but thank you so much. Thanks for watching my first proper sit-down video. I'm still working on this, figuring out how to go. It's also really cold in here, so I'm hoping I'm not too shivery or weird. Let me know what you think down below. Give me a thumbs up if you'd like to see some more. I hope you liked it. Stay groovy, and I'll see you in the next one.